after me. I'm a man. I'm 40.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick DiMartino. That's Johnny Montalbano. This is another episode of Moving the Goalposts. You can subscribe. You can listen to this show on YouTube.com. You can watch this show, I should say, on YouTube.com/ETB Network, where you can watch all Empty the Bench shows. You can follow us across social media at MTGP ETB, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can follow the Empty the Bench podcast network across social media at ETB Network. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick DMart. You can follow Johnny at Montalbano NY. And you can watch all of the Empty the Bench shows on YouTube.com/ETB Network. You can listen to all Empty the Bench shows on ETBpodcast.com. You can listen to Moving the Goalposts wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to like and subscribe. And this show, Moving the Goalposts, is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETB Network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. All right. So, Johnny, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I'm still in shock, honestly, over the Juan Soto news. I mean, nothing like it breaking at like 10 o'clock on Sunday night. Honestly, well after I'm well asleep, and I wake up to this news on Monday morning. It's really I don't even know what to say, because there's just so many details to go over. Not only with this, but now, like, where do my Yankees go from here? What's the whole baseball landscape now been, and like, where do the Mets go from here? Even there's so many angles to take to this.
Well, yeah, there's so many different angles from both sides. I think that,
and you're a Met fan, right? So
yes, I'm a Met
fan.
And
a Yankee fan. So this will be very.
This is why I put the exclamation points on the bench.
Well, congratulations, by the way, first and foremost, because I'm not going to be one of these bitter Yankee fans that I've been listening to on radio all day on Monday that are basically blasting the Mets about this. Because, I mean, first of all, I don't consider the Mets my biggest rival. I focus more on the Red Sox. I focus more in division than I do the crosstown. I mean, you know what? It's like Jets-Giants. You're a Jet fan. I'm a Giant fan. I don't consider the Jets a rival, even though they play in the same stadium, because they're not in the same division and they're not in the same conference.
Most years, they don't even play each other.
It's once every 4 years. Now, this will be fun.
Especially now that both teams are so bad. It's not like they're going to see each other in the Super Bowl.
Snoopy Bowl, that's it. But yeah. So go ahead.
No, well, I was going to say, you're right. There's a whole lot of angles. One thing I noticed about some Yankee fans on social media is that they think it's so unfathomable that Juan Soto would choose the Mets over the Yankees, or really any other team over the Yankees, even though the Mets offered him more money. Like, it just seems like they were like, how could something like this happen? It's like, well, maybe because they offered him a little bit more money. And also, the Mets, just like the Yankees, are also a very good team, and they're in a very good situation. It's not like I find it hard to believe that if a team like that, if, say, I don't know, the Cleveland Guardians or something like that offered him as much money as the Mets did, that offered him as much money as the Mets did, that he necessarily would have gone there. But as opposed to I don't think money was the only thing, but I think between the Mets and the Yankees, he was just sort of like, I would pick either one, and the one that offers me a little more money, I would take that one. I would take whichever one of those teams. I think the best part about this, though, if you're a Met fan, is the Mets. This is like the most non-Mets thing. Like, this is not what we're used to, and this is Steve Cohen coming in as the owner of the Mets and really delivering on his promises. And the thing with sports with sports franchises is that you have to take big swings. And sometimes they miss. Steve Cohen certainly has taken big swings, and he missed with Max Scherzer and Justin Verlander. The difference is Juan Soto is 26. He's not 40 years old. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference in this case. And just baseball contracts are just crazy right now. I mean, this is bigger than Ohtani's contract now. And, to me, it's just like, I think the way I would put it is Met fans are so happy about this because we couldn't really imagine something like this happening. We couldn't really imagine it 10 years ago that the Mets were going to be the team to sort of steal, quote unquote, a player from the Yankees, of all teams, especially. I mean, what the Mets are doing right now is basically what the Yankees used to do, is how I would put it. Like that's what the Mets are doing right now. They're doing what the Yankees used to do. And they're really like, I'm just so elated about this. And I rarely ever start off this show feeling happy about something. Like, that almost never happens. And this is one of the first times it did. And look, I mean, I agree with you about the whole rivalry thing. The Mets and Yankees are only rivals for petty sort of reasons, not for any real reason. They're not division rivals. I mean, unless they play each other in the World Series, and they do play each other in the regular season a little bit, but for the most part, we're not really rivals in any real way.
I think that in the New York market, I think the biggest rivalry you could say is Rangers Islanders in hockey, because they're both in the same division, same conference. That to me is the biggest rivalry. I mean, these two teams are not in the same. The Mets and the Yankees are not in the same division. They're not in the same league. But I mean, I get it, crosstown thing. I get it. I get it from that regard. But I mean, Nick D, I got to tell you, I mean, you said it very well there in the open there. Steve Cohen delivering on his promises, and you have to remember. Also, Steve Cohen is trying to develop that area around Citi Field. He's trying to get a casino in there. He's trying to get reshape that whole area. And this is going to help. There's twofold to this. This is the baseball aspect of it with Juan Soto, and there's also the business angle with Juan Soto. And I think that's where the Mets really, no pun intended, hit a home run with this. So sticking on the Mets first, and then we'll get to the Yankees side here in just a minute. But yeah, I mean, this definitely helps. And they'd gone out there and made a couple of moves in the rotation. And I think that with the pitching staff, and I think if you're going to, go crazy with a crazy contract in terms of money and years, I think it's better to do it on a position player than it is a pitcher. Right. And really Juan Soto, I think about this too, does he think maybe he gets to go to the Citi Field here with the Mets and be the guy versus when he was with the Yanks, he was with Judge and maybe being behind Judge. So now he gets to be the guy, and he's, in a perfect spot there because he's going to bat second, which I think is a great spot for him, behind Lindor. I mean, so the Mets have been putting these pieces together. I mean, we saw how well they did last year. Now you bring Soto in there who, it's not like he's going to a different league. He's played in the National League most of his career, all but 1 year, and he had played in that NL East, so he's very familiar with these teams. So it's not like you're taking a big risk in that regard either. So, yeah, I think this is really a great moment for the organization. Now, we'll see how that transpires here over the course of time, but I think this is a great moment for the Yanks, for the Mets, and for the Yanks. I think it's as equally painful as it is delightful at Citi Field.
So you're not one of the Yankee fans who are saying, who are talking about how they're kind of happy, or not happy that it happened, but they're sort of like the whole, I don't think we wanted him anyway. Like a lot of Yankee fans are downplaying how good he is right now.
Well, I mean, that's ridiculous because he was fantastic last year, and
especially in the playoffs.
Yeah,
and as great as Judge is, he's terrible in the playoffs.
Right, and I think the problem the Yankees had, one of the problems they had last year was their lineup was not deep enough. I mean, they had a great 2-3 punch with Soto and Judge, but that lineup was not deep enough when you compared it to lineups like the Dodgers. The Dodgers were having 7-8 players deep. So, and remember, the Yankees traded like 7 players to get him, including Michael King, who ended up being an all-star there, Kyle Higashioka, who's been a pretty good catcher, and some other top prospects. I mean, they basically, and it's a phrase we've used a lot here in sports, is all in. I mean, they went all in because they only got Soto for 1 year out of all that.
But they thought they were going to be able to keep him because they were the Yankees.
Absolutely.
I mean, like the Yankees, they got him for 1 year under the mindset of, okay, we're gonna get him for 1 year and then we're gonna re-sign him, because they didn't think he was going to go anywhere. And
that's where, when I wake up Monday morning. Now, mind you, I get up at 4:00 in the morning most mornings, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. But I get up that early, and one of the first tweets I see out of all this was that the Yankees actually did offer him an extra year and a few $1 million total less than what the Mets did. So it's not like the Yankees went out there with some cheap offer or didn't offer him a contract at all. But I think one of the many other reasons why the Yankee fan can be frustrated, and maybe this can be a legitimate frustration, is the Yanks now have pretty much swung and missed at a lot of guys here in terms of the big free agency market, whether it was Bryce Harper, whether it was Manny Machado or others. So that part can be legitimate, but it's also about fits too. And I think Juan Soto was a great fit. Now, his defense is still a question mark, but there's no question that when two of the many great things about him is he plays every day and he gets on base. And and number 3, he's a left-handed hitter. See, that's where the Yanks are going to be in a bit of a predicament here, because I feel like now they have to go out there and not overreact, because I put this out on Twitter at Montalbano and Why Monday Morning. Plan A, obviously, for the Yankees here was Juan Soto. Plan B cannot be getting Pete Alonso. And if anything, translating back to the Mets here, I actually think this signing, bringing in Soto, actually makes it more likely that Alonso goes back to the Mets.
You think so?
I do.
Okay.
Let's be honest. Does Pete Alonso want to win, or does he want the money? Maybe a combination of both.
I don't. The answer is probably somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
I would say. I'm sure he cares about both. In fairness, the Yankees are just in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
It's not unfathomable that the Yankees have a pretty good shot at being able to win a World Series if Pete Alonso were to go there.
I call me crazy. I don't know if he's that good of a fit on the Yanks, because you know what he is? He's another right-handed power hitter, which they already have
He's a power hitter and can't hit for average well at all, and is not good defensively.
That's the last thing the Yankees need right now.
Look, given it's not that he's not.
To be fair though, everybody wants to talk about him having a down year last year. He still had a very impressive year for a first baseman. It was not the 50 home runs and 100 RBIs that he had a couple of years ago as a rookie and stuff, but he still put up a pretty good year. Well, and you know what Alonso did last year for the Mets? He played every single game.
Yeah.
In baseball, which has a major durability problem, he played every single day last year.
Yeah. I agree. And his number, he didn't have a good year. If you listen, he hit 240 and 34 home runs. So he could hit home runs, but he can't hit for average very well. And it's not like, and he's a first baseman and not very good on defense. So most Met fans, until he hit that home run against the Brewers, I would say we're very fed up with Alonso. Up until that moment, most Met fans were, if you were to ask them, were very fed up with Alonso at that point. And look, I agree with you. He's not a perfect fit for the Yankees, but that doesn't mean like you can't kind of make it work a little bit. Is anybody a perfect fit? He's a first baseman. He can hit. I don't know. Like to me, I think he could be a fairly decent fit. You could argue. I haven't thought about it that much, but I guess you could argue that it makes it more likely that the Mets will re-sign Alonso. I was thinking beforehand that it would make it less likely. Now I'm thinking maybe it's more likely because Pete Alonso might want to be on what is like sort of thought of like as like a super team in a sense in the Mets. And so I think that could very well be true. I'm just not 100% sure because they're not going to have as much money to spend on Alonso. But even if it's true that Juan Soto makes it less likely that Alonso re-signs with the Mets, I would still rather have Juan Soto than Alonso. It's like not even close.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair because you know what you can do, and I know they're the big question. You can move Mark Vientos to first base if you wanted to. And go
that's what I was saying. Mark Vientos can go to first base.
Although if you listen to if you saw David Stern's comments on Monday, I mean, he made it sound like it's like he really wants to keep Vientos over at third base. But I mean, the thing is though, and this why I think Alonso actually would be better off with the Mets would be just like Aaron Judge being behind Soto. If you put Alonso behind Soto with the Mets, then maybe that helps Pete out a little bit more because maybe there'll be more men on base, and then he can do it that way. I know he left a ton of men on base last year, but maybe it helps him out, and maybe it helps his confidence there too.
It could. Look, I don't know. It's very hard to like. Hitting in baseball can be very hard to predict. Batting averages fluctuate pretty drastically often.
Yeah. I mean, when you talked about like the league leader hitting like 310 or something versus like back in the day, it used to be like 330, 340, no problem. The batting average is something that I think has diminished in the sport. And I think they were trying to get that back up with the banning of the shift. And obviously that is not done. That doesn't happen at all. I think it's best, though, if Alonso does go back to the Mets. And I do feel like at the end of the day he will, because I just don't see him going to like a team like the Rangers or like the Mariners or something like that. I mean, it makes it. I feel like it's more likely. The thing is, I mean, you already have Judge, you already have Stanton on the Yankees. Why do you need another right-handed hitting power hitter? And it's not like Alonso; he's a young guy either. So, I mean, he's only been in the league for a few years, but you remember he came up awfully late in his career. He's 30. He just turned 30 a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
So, he's not like he's a 23-year-old kid. It's not like Soto, who's 26. I know he's been in the league for a little while, but Alonso's that magic 30 right now.
Yeah, well, if he were to get a contract, he wouldn't be getting the 15-year contract that Soto got.
Well, I wonder, and this is what will be interesting with Alonso is if he prices himself out, he might end up taking another short-term deal. And if he says he gets like a 3-year deal and tries to test free agency at 33, then, again, he might be pushing it again. I'm sure he's looking for like 6 or 7, maybe one big massive contract in his career because that may be what he's got left. But I mean, I don't see how, if you're the Yankees, you're going to give him. I don't see the Yankees giving him a 7-year contract. You're starting to see it. I mean, what the Yankees are basically telling you right now is like these days of like long-term, big-term contracts are starting to go away.
Well, it depends on who the player is.
Yeah, but I mean, Judge was a homegrown guy. Garrett Cole was at the time an ace pitcher. I mean, he was an ace pitcher. He still is, but that's a big risk. I mean, he missed half the year this past season.
Yeah,
they're still trying to pay Stanton off through that trade, which, by the way, like the anniversary of that trade was just a couple days ago. So, and that was 7 years ago, which is freaky when you think of that. But yeah, I mean, as far as the Mets go, it's fantastic. As far as the Yankees go, it's depressing.
Yeah, it sucks
because it's multiple instances now where back in the day you see George get all these big guys. And now Hal has, for either whether it's not offering contracts or flat out missing, it is depressing. And it's tough because you look at this team going into next year. I mean, obviously you've got Aaron Judge, the face of your franchise, the captain. But what other pieces? You have a lot of other question marks surrounding him. You've got, you don't know if Gleyber Torres is going to be back. What are you doing at first base right now? It's not going to be Rizzo. I mean, right now you're looking at possibly like Ben Rice, who we saw for a short period of time last year, or an aging DJ LeMahieu. You can't go into next year with that at first base. You can't.
That's the question, though. It's like if you're talking about how bad the situation is at first base, why is it so unfathomable that they would sign Alonso?
Well, I'm not saying it's not unfathomable. I just don't know if it's a good fit or not.
It might not be a good fit, but it might be the best given the situation under the circumstances.
Yeah, I would have to look at the free agency list at first base. The one guy that I would think about, and I don't know if they could move back to first base, but Cody Bellinger, who played with the Cubs last year, I think is somebody that could be a fit for the Yanks at first base because, he is a power guy from the left side, and he's played first base before. I know in the last few years he's used him more in center field, but I would look at somebody like that. But the one thing I would say is I don't know if you're the Yankees here that you want to overreact to this. Well, I mean, you're probably going to, but
the fans will. But how will the Yankees?
Oh, the fans! I got to tell you, like I said, I've been listening to WFAN in New York on the app. Even though I live down here in South Carolina, there's no real local sports radio down here in South Carolina, so I'm listening to that on the ride to and from work on Monday. And I got to tell you, like these fans are hilarious. Whether it's celebrities or on-air personalities or just fans in general calling up and stuff. That's the one thing about, and this is why it feels like baseball is better in the off season than in the regular season. These overreactions or these whole trade proposals are just hilarious. Like, you've seen some people, some Twitter videos of people, lighting up their number 22 Yankee jersey on fire, which I think is comical because, first of all, if it's a no-name jersey, why are we just burning it like you're assuming that it's Soto? I mean, you had Roger Clemens, Robinson Cano wore 22. I mean, you had some good.
It could be somebody else who comes in.
That's why if you buy a Yankee jersey, you make the right investment and you don't buy one that's got the name on the back.
Well, exactly. That's the point. But also, it's just like people make it sound like it's a boycott if you like burn a jersey, but it's like you bought that jersey, you just wasted money. But I don't get that. Now I will say a lot, and we will get into some of the craziness from some Yankee fans. I will say I think criticizing Juan Soto for going to the Mets is beyond silly. It is the whole loyalty thing for this whole thing that professional athletes are supposed to be loyal to the team that they were previously on. It's just so silly when another team offers them more money and puts them in a better situation. What allegiance does Juan Soto have to the Yankees, a team that gave him a 1-year contract? The whole thing is just silly. I've never bought into that. Just like nobody's loyal to their own job. I mean, if another job offered you, a couple $1 million more money, you would go to that job too. And here's Nick Turturro, who is an actor.
This is the one I was going to refer to.
John Turturro's brother. I mean, there's actually a whole lot of these videos.
You want to talk about a diehard, crazy Yankee fan?
Yeah. So
I think it starts with him.
So this is Nick Turturro.
Hey, Juan Soto, I got 2 words for you. Fuck you! That's right. Fuck you and the horse you rode in on. And the cavalry behind you. That's right, motherfucker. Yeah, I'm taking it personal. We gave you our love. We gave you our fucking heart and soul. It wasn't enough. You turned your cap around after the World Series. I saw that fucking move. 700 million, 730. Yeah, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Guaranteed years, it wasn't enough. You don't even choose the Dodgers. You don't even choose the Dodgers. You go off Broadway to the Mets. You don't want to be on Broadway? And you don't want to be Judge's guy? You don't want to be Judge's partner? Oh, that's right, Judge. Now it's your team. That's it. Let's stick it up his fucking ass. That's right. Let's go out. Let's get Burns, Fried, Bregman. Let's fucking Teoscar. I don't give a fuck. Now we're not fucking around. Take those fucking grungy, whatever those fucking, those stupid Mets. Fuck them.
All right, so
that's Nick Turturro for you.
Another very calm and measured reaction.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't express how you really feel. I'll give you a name, by the way. I know we were talking about first baseman for the Yankees here. I'd go up to Christian Walker. Now, again, he's a right-hander too, but that might not be a bad idea if you want to go down that road.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't watched him play in a while. I guess that's I think that makes sense. I think that makes a certain amount of sense.
Yeah, I mean he's a little bit older too, but I don't think he'll be. You're going to look at him getting offering 7 years.
Right.
He had 2 very good years in Arizona in 22 and 23. Last year He did miss some time, only played in 130 games. Did hit 251 with a 335 on base percentage, 26 homers, 84 RBI.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, like with all like these Yankee fans, it's almost like they're getting a taste of their own medicine a little bit. It's like this is the type of thing that the Yankees have been doing for so many decades, and now it happens like one time to the Yankees because there's another owner, Steve Cohen, who is like a Steinbrenner in a sense.
Now, what would have happened if he went to the Red Sox? Everybody talks. I mean, the Yankee fan.
You know what? Yankee
the Mets. What if it was the Red Sox though, and you face them 19 times? Well, it'd be fewer now because of the way they do the schedule now in baseball.
It would be way worse. I think it would be way worse.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. I also say is, you know what? Maybe it's better that it's not at least the Red Sox where you'd have to face them at least 13 times a year.
Yeah, that's true. It's just one of the more elated I've ever felt, I would say. And now look, now this means the Mets have real expectations.
Yeah.
Now with Soto. I'm not saying it's a World Series win or bust season, but there were real expectations as opposed to last season when we were totally okay with them losing to the Dodgers in the NLCS.
Mm-hmm.
It's obviously a little bit different. All right. So I do want to talk about the Jets a little bit.
Sure.
So it's official. The Jets have been eliminated from playoff contention after losing to the Dolphins. So I don't know if that's even much of a story that they're eliminated from playoff contention. Let's put it this way. They've been eliminated for a while, but now it's mathematical.
It could feel like it was opening kickoff of the opening of the season, and then the season's over, right?
Right.
We're talking about opening day and the season's over. It's like the opening kickoff and the season's over. But yeah.
Well, I don't know if I would have said that at the time. I was just I remember I did a playback. I was doing the playback stream for the Jets 49ers game for the Jets 49ers game.
Right.
And that loss feels a little worse now, given where the Niners are now, given that they're like a mediocre team. I'll say, of course, we all kind of knew they were going to be eliminated. From this game against the Dolphins, Rodgers played a good game. He actually did play a pretty good game. He threw for 339 yards. And, I mean, for a 40-year-old quarterback, that's pretty good. If Rodgers could play like that consistently, if the Jets' offense could play like that consistently, the Jets would likely be a playoff team, I would say. They would likely get that last wild card spot. And I think the issue of anything against the Dolphins was the defense. The defense was terrible, and the special teams wasn't great either. Like the Jets, and also the clock management was not great in that last drive of the game. They weren't good at controlling the possession, I would say. But the Jets were able to. Rodgers played a good game, and it's also true the Dolphins are not the best defensive team. That is also something you have to take into account. But you know what? In many of these losses, some of them were very much on Rodgers and the offense. Some of them were very much on the defense. I would say this one was very much on the defense.
Yeah. You know, Nick D, week in and week out, I come in here with you, and we talk about how the Jets seem to hit a new low every week. But just looking at this from a whole, did you ever think in your wildest dreams when the season started that it would have been this bad? 3-9,
no,
basically not being eliminated. The way things are going, I mean, even the most, and I love the guy, but the most pessimistic Jet fan, Morganson, couldn't have sat here and told me that they would have been 3-9, looking the way they've looked this year.
No, he would not have said that.
And he's Mr. Negative when it comes to the Jets. I mean, to be fair, but he's been right on about Rodgers. I mean, look, I never thought it was going to be this bad. I knew there was risk bringing him in here. Not just because of his personality as of late, but because he's an aging guy. But yeah. It's something every week. I mean, think about it. When we talked about the game against the Seahawks, how they were up 21-7, pretty much getting ready to go in for at least at the bare minimum a 3-score lead, and that game gets turned upside down because he throws a bad pick six, and then defense sputters. Now this time it's special teams that sputters when it looked like it was one of their strengths the last week. Then you have the game on Sunday where their special teams falls apart. I mean, it's something every week with them, and they just can't put it all together. And I just don't know where, like I said when I spoke with you last week about this, I just don't know where they go from here, because what what you have to address so many problems. Which number one, I don't know if Rodgers is going to come back here next year. We don't know who the coach is going to be. We don't know who the GM is going to be. They have so much to solve here. But even when at times it looked great, and I agree with you. I watched a good chunk of the game at my bar Sunday, and Rodgers did look a little bit better. And yeah, the Dolphin defense was shaky, but he took advantage of that. But not being able to hold a lead late and then going to overtime, and Tua just goes right down the field, marches right down the field on him and wins the game.
Yeah, because the Jets couldn't play defense. The defense was just bad.
And that really is should throw some alarm bells out, because all we've heard about is how great this defense is, how they got Pro Bowl guys, how they've got guys that can finally get to the quarterback, which is something they never even had even back in the Rex Ryan days. They weren't able to have a prolific pass rusher or a guy that's being able to get to the quarterback. Now, I think Will McDonald, who they have this year, probably is that guy. But it just, I don't know where they're going to go, because I don't know if you're looking at them about drafting a quarterback. I think they're going to end up with another win or two, so they're not going to be able to go they're not going to be up there with the other teams. I mean, there are a lot of bad teams in the NFL this year, and I think the Jets are going to end up with at least one more win. I thought that was going to be last week. I think it could possibly be this upcoming week. But yeah, it is just, it's a mess week in and week out, and the quarterback doesn't help himself when he doesn't really take full responsibility. Like we saw Josh Allen, who accounted for 6 touchdowns against the Rams, basically take accountability in that game. And then you have Rodgers who continues to come out and says stuff where he throws his teammates under the bus. In addition, it's not great. And they got it. And like I said, they've got to go out there and get a big name head coach. They've got to get a head coach with experience. No more of this young offensive coordinator or inexperienced special teams coaching crap. They've got to go out there and get a big name guy, like a Vrabel, whoever, a Brian Flores, somebody of that caliber has got to be the head coach of this team next year. Because if you want to capitalize on the window that you've got let's be honest, the Jets have some talent. That's why this is probably one of the more disappointing teams, because it's not like they don't have a lot of talent on this team. They've got receivers like Garrett Wilson. They've got running Breece Hall. I know he's hurt now, but Breece Hall was a very good running back in his rookie year.
He's not so good anymore, though.
No, he's not. I mean, he's not. He's been hurt. That's been part of the problem. But he's fallen off. I mean, Braylon Allen's been talked about more at the running back spot than Breece Hall has been this year. And they've got some playmakers on defense, but the bottom line is, whether it's health, coaching, or execution, they just can't put it out there. So that's where the real frustration is. Now this team has the longest streak of missing the playoffs in the NFL.
Yeah. I was 13 the last time the Jets played in a playoff game.
It's just
that's like nuts. Half my life ago. Last time the Jets were the Jets were in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was 20. It was those were the good old days of New York football, because both of the MetLife teams were pretty good around that same time frame, from like 07 to 12, and it's just fallen off.
Well, talking about head coaches. And you're right about that. I think they need to get a head coach, because one of the biggest problems this year for the Jets is the head coach. It's probably the biggest. In fact, I would argue it might even be the biggest problem, because when you look at like the way that they're losing some of these games, like basically just from running out of timeouts. Yeah, I think coaching is a really big deal. It's not like in basketball or baseball where like I think coaching in football matters more than it does in baseball or basketball. Like in basketball, you can have a couple of really star players and not have a great head coach and still be a good team. In baseball, if your guys are hitting and the manager knows how to kind of make a batting order, manage the bullpen a little bit, you're a fairly good team. But in football, you kind of need a head coach.
Yeah, and the one of the things they're going to have to deal with in the offseason is there are probably going to be a lot of teams that are going to be looking for head coaches. We've already had 3 coach firings in season. We're assuming that there's going to be quite a few more happening on Black Monday. I mean, I think you brought this up last week too. Doug Peterson, I think, would be a very interesting fit with this team, because he's got the experience. But that's what I mean. I think they need somebody who's done this for quite some time, that has had some success, like a Vrabel or Doug Peterson, like you said, that, or even a Brian Flores. Brian Flores is calling right now.
Brian Flores calling you right now. I totally agree. And I mean, I was bringing up Doug Peterson last week, and a lot of people, like, I brought up Doug Peterson a bunch of times, and people think I'm crazy for saying that the Jets should look at Doug Peterson. But Doug Peterson actually has real success as a head coach. And I also wanted to potentially bring back Rex Ryan. I would like to see that too. I think it's less likely that that's going to happen, although I don't know. I think from what Rex Ryan has been saying, it looks like he'd be willing to take the job.
Oh, listen, if you watch Get Up or you watch Sunday NFL Countdown on ESPN, Rex Ryan is basically auditioning and begging you that he wants to coach next year.
Yeah. And
the thing is, though, there are going to be a lot of teams, like I said, there are going to be a lot of teams that are looking for a coach. I mean, I know that there's also some maybe up-and-coming guys like the Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, but I would not be going down that road. Like, I would tell you right now, I think some team like the Chicago Bears could use an experienced coach for Caleb Williams and that team. I think Mike Vrabel or somebody like that would work great with the Bears.
Yeah, I think so too.
So that's where I view the Jets here. I think you've got to pounce on one of these guys once we get to the end of the season here, and there's going to be some more firings. I mean, possibly. I mean, we're looking at quite a few here that are going to happen, and because there are so many bad teams in the league this year, or there could even be the case where some good teams, if they don't make a very deep run, could also be firing coaches. Like I'll tell you right now, I still don't think Nick Sirianni's out of the woods. Out of it yet. Yeah, he's not out of the woods yet there with the Eagles. With the way that team is shaped this year, with the talent that they've got on that team, if that team doesn't make a very deep run, if they don't win a playoff game, and he makes a very dumb mistake in the playoffs and costs that team a game, I think there's a lot of pressure there in Philadelphia to go deep this year, especially with the roster that they've got. And he's been a problem. And there are Eagle fans that I've met and that I know that'll tell you that they will tell you that the coach is the problem. I was hanging out with two people on Sunday, and even though they won that game against the Eagles, they were not against the Panthers. They were not happy at all with how they executed that game. So
because they barely won, and the Panthers are one of the worst teams in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I know they looked better, but they definitely showed some frustration. They definitely had some moments that did not look good there. But that's where I think when the end of the season comes, end of the regular season comes here in a few weeks, that's where I think the Jets need to put their focus. I even say before you decide on Aaron Rodgers or anything else, you got to get a GM in here. You got to get a GM that knows what he's doing, and you got to get an experienced head coach. I think experience at both levels would help this team tremendously. Instead of taking the gamble with a possibly up-and-coming guy, which is a whole true wild card in all this, like we saw with Robert Saleh
Robert Saleh was just a defensive coordinator. And which is what the Jets have been doing for so much. Like so many times, they just hired defensive coordinators as coaches. Basically.
Yeah, and that's why I think you've got to go the other direction here and bring in like an OC or something like that, or bring in a guy who's has had head coaching experience.
Yeah, which is why I like Doug Peterson. I mean, the only issue with Rex Ryan is that he's very much a defensive guy. And he was not very involved in the offense, which was a common criticism of Rex Ryan.
And I also think
Saleh was worse with that.
His antics, though, might also get in the way too. And I don't think Jet fans are going to like those antics again if they don't lead to results like it did the first time. And I know they made 2 conference championship games, but they did not get the goal that he promised year in and year out. And then after those 2 AFC championship games, the team went downhill because they pretty much ruined their quarterback and tried making him to something that he wasn't, and that ultimately led to their downfall.
Do you think maybe Rex Ryan has mellowed out?
No, he hasn't stopped. I mean, do you watch him on Get Up and stuff? I mean,
I never watch Get Up.
No, and look, I don't either because I mean, I watch it but it annoys me from times because they're so pro Cowboy, it pisses me off. But if you watch Rex and the way he talks sometimes and stuff, he talks like he was with the Jets and how he's going to promise that they're going to win championships and stuff. He's no different on there.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me. That doesn't surprise me at all.
I think some team will look at him and he's itching to get back out there. I get it. But like you said also before, the risk with him is that he hasn't done this in so long and the league has changed too.
Yeah, that is true. But the flip side is he's still very much involved. he's been an analyst all this time.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, which is not the same thing as coaching per se, but like he's at least kind of involved. It's not like he's disappeared for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that
Fair
would
point.
be different. So he knows it a little bit. My first choice, I would say probably though, is Doug Peterson. I would say people forget that Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, who was the backup quarterback and outcoached Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl. I mean, I'm not saying he was amazing with the Jaguars, but he also, in his first year, brought them back. Like in 2021, the Jaguars went 3-14, and then you brought this up last week, and then the next week they won a playoff. The next year they won a playoff game against the Chargers. So
they turned it around, and I mean they had one of the quickest turnarounds.
That's not nothing.
Yeah.
So
you'll get a chance to see Doug Peterson on Sunday.
Yeah, and I know most Jet fans don't like that idea. Like, I haven't met really anybody else except you who has said, that might not be a bad idea. Everybody else is like, why would you want Doug Peterson?
Because it fits the qualities of what they need right now. They need an experienced coach who's had success.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the whole NFL playoff picture. There's a whole lot of stuff, I would say. Right now, the Seattle is winning the NFC West. And I think the Rams, after the Rams beat the Bills, I think the Rams are going to come back and win that division. They're only one game behind. Seattle's 8-5. The Rams are 7-6. Seattle, in the next 4 games, they play the Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, and the Rams. There is a really solid chance that the Seahawks will lose 3 of their next 4 games. A really solid chance. And by the way, the Bears may be a closer game than you think they will be, because they're playing on the road, and the Bears are a pretty good home team. So I actually think the Rams are going to end up coming back and winning that division. The Rams, they play the Niners, the Jets, the Cardinals, and then Seattle. I think there's a good chance the Rams end up like winning 3 of their next 4, potentially. Even all 4, possibly. Kind of
this Rams team reminds me of last year's Rams team, where once they got healthy and late second half of the year, they took off and got themselves into the playoffs. I think as long as they stay healthy and they've got both Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams there to go along with Matt Stafford, I think the Rams can take off and like they did last year, Nick. You're right. That division, though, is so crazy because for a while we thought now the Cardinals were going to have it. Now they've fallen off. And the Seahawks have won 3 straight, and now they've taken off. But the Rams are right there. And, heck, even the 49ers, despite all the injuries they got, even they still got a chance. So, I mean, it is really, really wild. But I think if right now the way things are shaping up, I think it is the Rams because they're healthy. They're healthier than they've been before. And if they have all those guys, those weapons on offense, I mean, who's going to stop them? I mean, they just put up 44 against the Bills on Sunday. So if they could put up 44 against the Bills, then the sky's the limit. And like you said, like the Seahawks, they're not good defensively. I mean, I know they've looked better here these last couple of weeks, but do you trust the Seahawks to continue this streak? I do not.
No.
Again, here's another thing I'm going to go to: experience. I'm going to trust Sean McVay, because he's been down this road before more than somebody like a Mike McDonald there with the Seahawks. And I just think the problem with the Cardinals is just, it was a nice run, but again, experience. They've got a lot of young guys on that team. They're not good defensively. Their defense, which has showed good moments, has really been a thorn on their side almost all season. And the 49ers, I think, just have way, way too many injuries to overcome here. I mean, they're on basically their 3rd string running back, and even he got hurt, and we don't know if he's going to play. Remember, they got a quick turnaround. They play Thursday night.
Yeah.
And so they're just so banged up and depleted. I know they went up there and won big against the Bears, and you see that they still have some big playmakers on the team, but they're so depleted. It's so difficult to see them overcome this. And a lot of those guys may not be coming back this season. If you were to tell me, say, in 2 weeks or so that those guys would all be making a comeback, then I think you could make the case for the Niners. But I just think it's way too much to overcome here in a very, very tight division.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And not just a tight division, but just the better conference. Just the better conference, I would say. I mean, you have, the NFC North is probably going to get 2 of the 3 wild card spots.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy because the Packers would be winning 2 of these. I mean, would be winning the NFC West right now, and not at 8-4. But yeah, right now, the way things are shaping up, I mean, I think unless some team gets really hot or if injuries play a factor, this is looking like the Eagles and the Lions out in the NFC, and probably shaping up right now the way things are looking that it's going to be Bills, Chiefs in the AFC the way things are.
Yeah.
And again, now injuries could play a role. Some team gets hot at the right time. I mean, it seems like it's too easy just to be those 4 teams, but the one thing I would say from the NFC side for a second, Nick D, that's to watch here is the Lions are really, if you want to talk about injuries, the Lions are really banged up. I don't know if you realize how many guys, especially on defense, there are out right now. I think they were reporting like 13 defensive players on IR right now. Now, some of those guys will be back by season's end, but I mean, obviously the big one is Aiden Hutchinson there for the Lions. I mean, they're still finding ways to win, but you've seen now these last 2 weeks that they played very, very close wins against division opponents in the
home games
and the Packers.
Home games too.
Yeah, and their schedule still. I mean, if you look at the Lions' schedule the rest of the way, it's tough. I mean, they've got one of the games of the year this Sunday against the Bills. Now, granted, that's at home. But they've got the Bills, and their schedule the rest of the way out is brutal. The Eagles have a very favorable schedule the rest of the way out. So I will tell you right now, I think right now the number 1 seed in the NFC is going to the Eagles. And I know it pains me to say it as a division opponent, but I mean, unless they, somebody like a Hurts or a Barkley, or they lose some more key guys on offense, it just seems like it's too favorable of a way that the Eagles are not going to get the number 1 seed. And I know I picked against the Lions a lot lately, but it's because I think their injuries now offensively, look, they're still a firehouse, but they're going to have to start winning games like they won Thursday, 34-31. They're going to have to, pretty much play shootout football. Dan Campbell's going to have to be gutsy like he was last Thursday to keep winning these games.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I will say what people say about the Chiefs, they always find a way to win. We always hear that narrative. And
I think a win is a win.
Yeah, in the NFL, a win is a win. However, I also think it's not the end of the evaluation of the team. Like, a win is a win in the standings, but, you can evaluate teams a bit more nuanced than just winning and losing, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lions, I think if the Lions are fully healthy, if they're healthy, or not even fully healthy, but moderately healthy, a little more healthy than they are now on defense, they're the best team in the NFL, I would say. If they're
fair.
Moderately healthy. Right now, I'm not convinced of that because of the injuries. But a lot of these guys are coming back. So I would say I agree. I think the Eagles are going to end up getting the number 1 seed, even though I think the Lions are a better team, is how I would put it.
Yeah. And though it could just be like we'll talk about in the CFP playoff, it could also be the way you get to the conference championship. Maybe the Eagles are playing a more unfavorable opponent. The Lions have a favorable stretch to get to the conference championship as well.
Yeah. All right. So speaking of college football playoffs, I want to talk about it a little bit. So the first 12-team playoff is now finally set. After the conference championship games, I have a lot of, I guess I have a lot of thoughts on this. I guess the biggest controversy was the whole SMU Alabama thing. I don't even know how much of a controversy that is, but here's what I'll say. The bigger the playoff is, the more impossible decisions become, is how I would say, because this year the committee was sort of in an impossible situation. Sure, it sucks for Alabama that they were in and then got penalized for not playing, basically just because Clemson beat SMU in the ACC championship game. However, this was probably the most reasonable thing that the committee could have done, because there was really no justification to leave out SMU after losing to Clemson by a field goal. That would have been tough to do. Not only would it have been bad for the committee in terms of like they tend to like to take the path of least resistance sometimes, but it's just like Alabama's last 3 games. I mean, they beat Mercer and then Auburn, and then got killed. I'm sorry, they beat Mercer, lost to Oklahoma, got killed by Oklahoma actually, and then beat Auburn. So and not to mention they have lost to Vanderbilt, and so they have 3 losses. SMU was in the playoff basically, and then if they lose, how can the committee justify them being in the playoff and then dropping out, losing by a field goal in a game that they earned?
Well, it would have been what you would have seen is if Alabama got in over SMU, it would have been hypocritical because you would have punished the team for playing in a conference championship versus a team that didn't even make its conference championship.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say it's hypocritical is when you look at my Notre Dame Fighting Irish, they dropped 2 spots to the 7th ranking, but they should have dropped because they didn't play in a conference championship because they're an independent school. So if you're telling me that you would have dropped Notre Dame because they didn't play, but you would have kept Alabama the same because they didn't play in a conference championship, you'd be showing so much hypocrisy, it would make your head spin.
Especially with Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's not even in a conference. They can't play in a conference championship.
Exactly, yeah, and they couldn't be any higher than 5 as it was. I mean, I wish they would have stayed at 5 because I think it would have been a more favorable matchup playing Clemson, and Clemson's got an interesting draw, by the way. I'll talk about it in a second. I think, if anything, the team that probably got the worst draw out of this was probably Oregon, because who else did? I'm looking at this real quick. Ohio State also got a very, very tough challenge too. So, no, but it's the right call. See, you know what I find interesting? I would have dropped Texas a little bit more because the thing I came away with was losing to the same school twice in 1 year, which is very, very rare to do. And I felt like this second one, the SEC championship, was actually worse because you basically were playing the second half of the back against a backup quarterback who actually looked better than Carson Beck did.
Yeah, I guess that does make sense. Although the first time they lost by a much bigger margin, and it was a home game. So
yeah, but I guess there's 2 ways to look at that.
But yeah, no, that's not wrong at all.
So I got to tell you, like I'm watching the rankings reveal on Sunday, and I didn't have a problem with any of it. I thought they got it all right. Now, of course, there's going to be flaws. It's something they're going to maybe have to fix up. I mean, it's strange how like the team that's 12th or 16th overall in the overall CFP rankings gets a bye in the first round because of the way that they go, where the 4 highest ranked conference champions get that first round bye. But I think for the most part, all things told, this is probably the best result, the best outcome they could get.
Yeah, because like I said before, they were in an impossible situation, and no matter what they did, they couldn't. It would be impossible to fully justify it because SMU, you couldn't drop down SMU. I would understand if SMU hadn't gotten in, if beforehand they were on the outside looking in, and the committee set the precedent that you have to win your conference. A team like SMU, given their schedule, has to win the conference in order to be playoff worthy. I would understand that, but you can't put them in and then just like drop them so far, losing by a field goal in the conference championship game, and then which then would knock them out. Like that would be just a travesty if that had happened. I mean, you could also say like Clemson being 12 basically is very tough to justify because, well, their ranking is 16, but they get, the whole automatic bid. Yeah. And I will say I'm no fan of automatic bids, but given that Clemson just beat them, it's kind of impossible to justify leaving them out of the playoff and leaving SMU in.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't have automatic bids.
Yeah.
But it's also very hard to justify having Clemson being ahead of South Carolina. South Carolina just beat them in their own stadium. So it's kind of hard to justify that also. I mean, I just think the whole 12-team playoff is so, I would say, it's almost like, I wouldn't say unworkable, but it just puts the committee in so many just impossible situations. Like the 4-team playoff usually was pretty easy. Now, I do like that there's an expanded playoff. I think maybe they did too much by making it 12 teams. I think. I mean, like, why go all the way to 12? Couldn't they have just gone from like 4 to 8 and then maybe gone to 12 after that? I mean, that was my thought process, at least. I mean, there were some years where I think it would have been great if we had an expanded playoff. I think, like 2016, I think that would have been great for an expanded playoff. We would have had Penn State. We could have had that year we could have had Penn State, Michigan, and then maybe USC and maybe Oklahoma or whatever that Florida State, maybe whatever that 18, if we had an 8-team playoff. That would have been great, because the problem with the 4-team playoff is that there were a lot of really good teams that were playing in bowl games that were meaningless, and the players were sitting out because they didn't want to hurt their draft stock, which is what happened with Michigan and Florida State that one year. And Florida State ended up beating them. But it really was a shame that Michigan wasn't able to compete in the playoffs that year, because they were good enough. USC and Penn State, too, were good enough to compete in the playoffs. And they probably could have beaten Washington. So this is one, I would say, positive of an expanded playoff.
Yeah, and you know what? Everything is expanding. I mean, we're seeing that it feels like in every sport. I mean, heck, the NFL even expanded a couple of years ago to now have 2 more extra teams with the Super Wild Card weekend. So,
yeah.
But unfortunately, you don't want too much of a good thing. I agree with you. I felt like we did need an expanded from 4, but I would have went to 8. I would have maybe even 6, and you say the top 2 get a bye out of all that. You could have done that. I thought the 12. Not only was it going to 12 so fast, but the way they were talking about how those 12 teams are decided, I thought was a bit of a reach. I mean, they'll have to clean it up. And maybe, I don't know if they'll do that next year or the year after, but they're going to have to clean it up. This is almost like an experiment to see that. But, you know, it doesn't matter. You go from 12, you go to 24, and it's still going to be nuts, because the way they're going to shape it out too. Maybe you know what we need? Maybe we need like a college football NIT like we have in the NCAA in basketball.
Well, we kind of do with some of these bowl games.
Yeah, and heck, you know what? You do get that Michigan-Alabama rematch again, albeit in a slightly lesser bowl game, but.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, bowl season starts up real soon.
And I love bowl season.
It's great. And you know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't care what the matchup is or what the name of the bowl game is. I mean, we were going through some of them at my place on Sunday, and we were laughing at some of the names of them. There are some pretty cool ones. Like, I know, you know, it'll be one of the more interesting matchups is South Carolina, Illinois. I think that's in the Citrus Bowl. I think that's pretty cool. I'll even give you a lower level bowl game that I think is pretty special, especially because where I live. How about Coastal Carolina pretty much playing in the Myrtle Beach Bowl game, which will be at Coastal Carolina at their own campus.
Yeah.
At the Myrtle Beach Bowl on December the 23rd, which is an 11 a.m. start. So that's a pretty cool thing to see. But yeah, you know, at the end of the day, it's extra college football in a season that goes by so fast, but it's structured so well. I mean, there's going to be flaws no matter what, but I'll tell you what, you look at the just getting back to this 12-team playoff for a second, these first round matchups are going to be awesome to watch, because I can make the case right now. I almost could see 3 upsets in the first round.
Yeah.
I really do. I could see, I mean, I'll have to think about it more and more before I make my official picks, but I could see Clemson making it a game against Texas. I could see Tennessee making it a game against Ohio State, and I could see SMU making it a game against Penn State. I really do. And then the Indiana-Notre Dame game, which there's a couple of cool facts about this one. You know, Notre Dame, first off, hosting a playoff game, which, by the way, has already been sold out. They're already reporting that pretty much it's going to be all Notre Dame fans there, which great job by the Fighting Irish for doing that, because it is an in-state rival. And that game is going to be awesome, because that game is going to be on ABC. And think about a Notre Dame home game
not being on NBC.
Not being on NBC. Do you know how cool that's going to be? I believe that's going to be a McDonough McElroy and McGrath special. I'll have to double check that, but not seeing like, back in the day, Tom Hammond or, Dan Hicks, or as we've seen now, Noah Eagle or others, the NBC crew, not calling it. I got to tell you, it's going to be different. I'll tell you what, seeing those ESPN graphics with at the Final Stadium, like I said, I haven't seen that in my lifetime. I mean, I was born in '90, so I haven't seen that in my lifetime. I got to get used to that, but it's going to be extra special. The only thing that we're missing from and we don't know yet because it's still 10 days out, but say at Ohio State, at Penn State, and at Notre Dame, weather. Could we see some frozen precip? Is it going to be, how cold is it going to be? Obviously, Texas it's a little bit milder there in Texas for the Clemson Texas game, but how is cold weather going to play a factor? Now, of course, Notre Dame is playing their in-state rival, and they're not getting a Southern school, and Tennessee can be cooler there, but like an SMU against Penn State in the cold, and just from a betting perspective, those lines all 4 of those games opened up over a touchdown for the home team favorite.
Yeah.
So I know I got to think long and hard about how I want to go down that road, but I'm saying right now, I could see 3 upsets out of the 4 teams. I really could.
Yeah, I don't know what my picks are yet, and I also know the lines are probably going to shift between now and then.
They probably will come down a little. I would imagine they come down a little bit unless we see some injuries or whatnot. But yeah, it's fun. I'm excited to see that on the 20th.
Yeah.
I was saying real quick before we move on, Saturday the 21st is going to be epic. 3 of the 4 first round games, 2 NFL games, and 2 stellar NFL games. So from noon to like midnight, your day next Saturday the 21st is set.
Yeah, it really is. So this Saturday though is Army Navy. I haven't made a pick yet. I think the spread is like a full touchdown Army or full touchdown favorites. I will say, even though I appreciate the tradition and everything, and I do watch all the Army Navy games, I also have to say I can't begin to tell you how much I hate the Army Navy game. Part of me,
really?
Well, not that I hate the game. Let me rephrase that. It's not that I hate the game. The game is fine. I watch the Army Navy game, but I hate the day. I hate the day. I hate the Army Navy day, the day of the Army Navy game, because it reminds me the college football season is basically over.
That's fair.
It also reminds me the NFL regular season is going to be over soon. It also reminds me the weather is going to be getting much colder, which you don't have to worry about. You have that privilege. And
no, not down here. I don't.
Yeah.
No,
and,
last weekend we had, with my band that I'm with, we had 2 shows that basically we were lucky we were inside because it was in the 20s at night.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and the highs were only around, I say only. I mean, I think like this Friday down here in South Carolina, where I'm at in the Merle's Inlet area, the high is in the mid 40s.
Yeah. Wow.
We've had Christmas mornings that were in the teens here. We've had years where the high's been 70, but we also had temperatures where it's been in the teens. It's going to be mild first half of the week, but then it's supposed to cool back down again this weekend. So it depends. I mean, you might.
Up by me. The point I'm making is up by me. It's a lot worse.
Yeah. You'll be getting snow. I don't. If we get a dusting or something, then everything shuts down here. I can give you a long story about that, but I don't want to waste your time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just the whole game, like the whole Army Navy thing, it really just depresses me a little bit because it's just like the whole thing is just is coming to an end, and it's going to be January, and I hate January. I've never had a good January before, especially considering the Jets are never in the playoffs. It just it's just like everything around the Army Navy game is just depresses me every year.
That's fair. By the way, depending on what book you use, this line is either Army a 6.5 to a touchdown favorite.
Yeah, on DraftKings, I think it's a full touchdown favorite.
It is a touchdown at and the total is 39.5.
Oh wow. Yeah, I think basically in Army Navy games, the under and the underdog is usually who you want to take.
Right, and that's what I would by the way, I'll tell you right now, that is what I am taking. I'm taking Navy plus the 7, and I'm taking the under. Service Academy, I mean, it's almost like taking the over in the national anthem of the Super Bowl. is probably two of your better bets you can make. Is taking the over in the national anthem in the Super Bowl, except last year when it was Reba, and always taking the under in Service Academy games. But I don't know. But see, this year though was interesting because both these teams are good. It seems like always where one is much better than the other. We usually will have a 9-3, maybe facing a 3-8 or something like that. But you have two they're both very, very good. They're both going to be in bowl games themselves. So it's not like this is the last game of the year for both of these teams. I mean, there was a while where it almost looked like these two were going to play each other again, possibly in the what was that? In the American Championship. But so maybe I almost would lean more on the over because of how good the two schools are this year.
Yeah, I don't know. It might go up a little bit, the over-under. It might go up a little bit.
By the way, in the last 19 meetings, the under let me see here. Some crazy things. Yeah, so the total's 40 and 39 and a half.
Yeah.
So I almost would lean more on the over just because of how good these two schools are this year. But it's a great thing. First of all, one of the many reasons why I love it, besides seeing our men and women who are going to be serving, jumping up and down for joy for 3.5 hours, and seeing the kids who are playing the game. I think the time of this is perfect. 3 p.m. Eastern on a Saturday afternoon with no other a standalone game, I think is absolutely perfect. And because a lot of the times, they these schools will run the ball. There's very few passes thrown. It's one of the quicker games every year, too. Yeah. I mean, it'll still be 3.5 hours, but it does go by a lot quicker. But it's always cool. And by the way, I did see that on Monday that CBS and the Academy did agree on a 10-year extension. So that's going to keep this game on CBS until, I think they said 2038.
Oh, wow.
So, always a cool thing.
Yeah, of course. No, I don't disagree with that at all.
But the way you said it, though, I mean, the way you mention it, is a very, very good point, though. I mean, it is. You hate it because it's depressing because it tells you that the season is pretty much over.
Yeah,
and it shows signs of cooler weather. That is a very, very.
Maybe I'm too much of a pessimist. I don't know.
No, I think that's fair, especially where you live. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do want to talk about this Keith McPherson versus John Heyman thing. It was all about the whole Juan Soto thing. Where Juan Soto was going to sign. So this is what happened.
People believe everything I tweet. I've had 100,000 tweets, and you get one that was wrong, and it did say appears, and I know I rushed it, and it was a big mistake, and I regret it. But it's 2 years later.
No regrets.
I think
it's like
at some point, I think someone could probably drop it if they're a nice person.
What I think is it just like how I introduced you. Everybody in baseball knows who you are. So one, it's a credit to your work, your following, and how.
By the way, I won't be going on with you again. The whole thing has been a disaster.
That's okay.
I can't even believe you said that to question my integrity.
Are you being serious right now?
I'm being serious. Yeah,
John.
Asking me if I'm getting a cut because I have a relationship with an agent. That's outrageous. I know you're not a journalist. You don't know anything about this. I know you don't, but that's an outrageous comment. You should know that
it's
much.
Friday night at 8:30, John.
You should know that much.
And
I'm done with you.
I am not
I'm
taking
done with
this that
WFAN.
serious.
Goodbye.
John, thank you for
I
joining
can't
us,
even
John.
believe it.
Thank you,
I can't
John.
even believe it.
Thank you, John. Appreciate your time. He's got to get to bed. I did not expect it to go that way. I think if you heard my tone and the way that I am completely joking and kidding and having a lighter conversation, something that I spoke about recently too, with all of this Juan Soto.
Okay, so so he was obviously joking. If you heard what Keith McPherson was saying about him being on Juan Soto's payroll or whatever, like it was obviously a joke. It was joking about like the perception, even though he knows it's not true. That was kind of the whole point. He was saying it sarcastically, and John Heyman thought he was being serious.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that the first time that Heyman's had an issue with an FAN host? Or an issue with somebody's tone or something like that.
I think he did have another issue with WFAN, though I don't totally remember exactly who it was.
But yeah, so obviously I was not home Friday night when this happened. I had an event Friday night, but Yeah, when I went back and listened to this, I think John might have taken it wrong a little bit.
Yeah.
But this seems to be a problem that a lot of these beat writers have been having. I mean, these national reporters have been having now, going on these kind of shows, especially when you're going on with somebody who, I mean, I know McPherson's been on that fan for a few years now, and I know he's been on the MLB Network on that show Off Base, but I don't think he's really that well known.
He's not.
He's not really that well known. I mean, obviously, he's no Steve Summers. Nobody's ever going to be like Steve Summers or like the original FAN people. And that's been part of the problem that FAN, and really it's been radio as an industry, and really like Odyssey's been having is, all these legends, retiring and whatnot, and all these replacements just not living up to what the legends used to be. They've been shifting.
I think Keith McPherson is very good.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I have not really listened to him a lot. Obviously to me, I'm an old school FAN guy. Whether it was Imus in the morning or Beningo overnights before he moved to midday, Mike and the Mad Dog. There'll never be a show like that, a radio show like that again. Yeah. And Steve Summers at night, and even the update guys too. And the updates on FAN have changed so much, whether was with COVID or just in general. Now you used to have updates every 20 minutes, the 2020 flash, 2020 sports. Now you're having like a 90-second update once an hour.
Yeah.
So the radio, I'll take it from Nick. Radio's a dying industry right now. I mean, it's, that's, I think, part of it too, but I think Heyman might have taken it a little bit too far.
Yeah, I think he totally doesn't understand social cues, is how I would put it.
Yeah.
He seems to not understand that.
I was wondering if it was also McPherson might have brought up the Arson Judge tweet from last year, when he put out that thing. But, that's going to happen. Autocorrect. Look, I'm not going to lie. I put out things that have not been correct, but a lot of some of the time that's happened, it's because the autocorrect feature has hit too.
Yeah. All right. Finally, just to end the show, I want to get into unnecessary wagers.
Okay.
So here's what I have: Chargers -2.5 against the Bucks, Ravens -14.5 at the Giants, Jaguars +3.5 against the Jets, Steelers +5 at the Eagles, Dolphins +3 at the Texans, Packers -3 at Seattle, Saints +7.5. Though I think the Commanders will win outright. Lions money line. Rams +2.5, and Kyron Williams as an anytime touchdown scorer. And of course, Navy +7 and the under 39.5.
Okay.
As we talked about.
Well, that's not a bad play. By the way, you notice
$1 to win. I bet $1 to win over 1,400.
By the way, there's two things real quick. You notice how that Giant line, the Giants are home Sunday, and they're more than a 2-touchdown underdog at home Sunday. Oh, I mean, we didn't get into the whole Giant bit. But
because they're not worth listen,
I am not going to criticize you because I went 2 and going into Monday Night Football, I am 2-10 this week against the spread. My picks have been terrible.
Yeah.
Last week, week 13, I was so unlucky in some of my picks in week 13. I was screaming. And then this week, and this has been a theme for me this year. I have no idea what the heck this year has been for me. I cannot decipher this league, figure this league out at all when it comes to the spread.
Yeah, you were worse than me. I went in my pick'em league so far, depending on what happens tonight, I went 4-8, which I thought was bad.
And if you use the book that we've used on Football Forecast, I haven't won a game.
Wow.
I have 2 pushes, and I have lost the other 10 games going into Monday night. So the Monday night game, I picked the Bengals -5 or 5.5, whatever it was, faded. Take the Cowboys.
Wow.
Or it was a win by 4. I will try and redeem myself this week. Though, trust me, there is a lot of hesitation going into these picks this week. So,
yeah, all right.
Before I trust myself is what I'm saying.
All right. So that's our show this week. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody. This is Moving the Goalposts.